minut aka, bir minut.
Good morning, everyone. We will officially start our program today. Before we start the program, we would like to play the national East Turkestan anthem.
Assalamu alaikum, hürmetli qeyrindaşlar. Bugünkü programımız hammalar hoş gelipsizler. Programımızın başlaştığından burun aldı bilen iki devletinin milli marşı bilen başlamakçı.
You may sit down. Good morning to all of you honorable guests. My name is Miratai Erkin. I am the Program and Advocacy Manager for the World Uyghur Congress. Before we start, I would like to inform you that this opening session will be consecutively moderated in Uyghur by my co-moderator, İftihar Abdurrashid.
Hürmetli mimarlar, aziz qeyrindaşlar, hammalarning attiganligi xayrli bo'lsin. Kamini qeyrindaşlar İftihar Abdurrashiddan sizlarga o'tliq salom. Programımızı başlaştığım burun sizlerge şunu uqtirmoqchimanki, bu İçiliş yig'inining Uyg'urcha riyosatchiligini do'stim İftihar Abdurrashid qiladi.
We are pleased to welcome you to our second International East Turkestan Summit, where we gather to discuss our next steps, which will consist of ways and strategies to hold the Chinese government to account.
Biz sizning ikkinchi navbatlik Sharqi Turkiston Milliy Kengashiga kelganligingizni qizg'in qarshi olamiz. Bu yerga yig'ilib keyingi qadamlarimizni muzokara qilamiz. Bu yig'in Xitoy hukumatining mas'uliyatini surishtirishning yo'llari va strategiyalaridan tarkib topadi.
Before I jump into the program, I would like first for all of us to take a moment to reflect on the recently leaked Xinjiang police files. These are significant documents that visualize the Uyghur genocide in such a brutal way. We cannot forget these 5,047 faces. They, just like the millions others, deserve accountability and justice.
Men programını başlaştım burun hammamizning biroz vaqt chiqarib yaqinda oshkorlangan Xinjiang saqchi haqida o'ylashimizni umid qilaman. Bular Uyg'ur qirg'inchiligidan keyin naqadar ra'ymsizlarcha ilib berayotganligining ro'shan fakti. Bu 5047 mas'ul qarindoshlarimizni va boshqa yushurun va oshkor shaklda zulm uchrayotgan butkul xalqimizni hargiz unutib qolmasligimiz kerak. Bunun bilan Xitoy hukumatini javobgarlik tortish tadbirlari uchun xizmatimizni davomlashtira olamiz.
I want to thank the 21 co-host organizations of the summit who have contributed to making this a reality.
Ben Milli Kengişimizde biz bilen hemkarlaşkan 21 teşkilatlar rahmet etmem. Ular kengişimizni amalga oshirishda zo'r to'yib qo'shdi.
Today, we have 200 Uyghur scholars, activists, and leaders from 70 Uyghur organizations, all of whom came from over 20 countries around the world. We also have reputable international guests that have been key allies in our quest for justice. These individuals have made great contributions to our cause.
Bugünkü günde bu yerde 200 Uyghur tədqiqatçısı, fəaliyyətçi ve 70 Uyghur təşkilatının rəhbərləri var. Ularının həmmisi dünyadaki 20 neçə dövlətdən gəlген. Bizning adalet izlişimizdeki mühim ittifaqdaş olan dağlıq xalqaralıq mehmanlarımız var. Bu şəxslər bizning işlərimizə zor töküb qoşdu.
I am therefore honored to introduce these individuals to you. We will start the opening ceremony with remarks offered by policymakers from around the world. But first, I would like to welcome the President of the World Congress, Mr. Dolkun Isa, to give his welcoming speech.
Şoňlaşqa men bu kişilerni sizi tanıştırганымdan şeref his qilman. Biz echilish murosimimizni dunyoning har qaysi joylarida mutaxassislar o'tirib qo'ygan so'zlar bilan boshlaymiz. Ammo oldi bilan biz Dunyo Uyg'ur qurultayining raisi Dolqun Isa afandining echilish nutqi uchun sahnaga chiqishini qizg'in qarshi olamiz.
Assalamu alaikum. Dünyanın her qaysi joylaridan kelgan aziz fidoylar sabdashlarim. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. Welcome to our second Turkistan Uyghur Summit. We had our first summit in November 2018, convening the Uyghur diaspora in Myanmar. During the first Turkistan Summit, our main object was to awake the world and convince international community and to take action to stop atrocity crime taking place in our homeland. As a summit, important decisions were made and shaped our collective strategy. In the past 4 years, many steps have been taken and visible achievements were made. 9 parliaments, 1 government around the world have recognized the Uyghur genocide motions. 2 important bills were signed into the law in the United States. At the United Nations, 43 countries have made joint statements condemning atrocity and urging Chinese government to close the camps. The European Parliament has adopted a few resolutions at this fight. Many support groups were formed around the world to support the cause. The Uyghur tribunal judged the Chinese atrocity amount to crime against humanity and genocide. And the international coalition was formed, which supported by 400 international groups to end Uyghur forced labor. Due to international pressure, the United Nations High Commissioner Michelle Bachelet was forced to refuse access to Turkestan, and the Chinese government was forced to give access. Today, at this moment, High Commissioner is in Turkestan. But this is not the visit that we are regular. We want an independent investigation with unfettered access. So far, both office and the Chinese government have made it clear that this visit would be a propaganda visit. We are hugely disappointed. We will continue to monitor the visit and the follow-up with the office post-visit. However, Chinese government has continued denying everything despite credible evidence. It has spent billions of dollars to spread misinformation and start disinformation campaign. China has continued to intensify its effort to continue the genocide. This way, world conscience was shocked by coming like a massive amount of big Chinese government debt. containing thousands of pictures of detained Uyghur, personal information of almost 300,000 Uyghur citizens, and detailed instruction for the camp was to maximize the camp security, receiving shoot to kill orders against anyone who dare to escape. The Xinjiang police files, as they are called, reminds the world not just of the Chinese government atrocity, crime, and genocide for the Uyghurs. For us, this is not breaking news. It is a daily reality of our lives. Over the past 5 years, all Uyghur Kazakh in the diaspora have tried to receive any kind of information about the whereabouts and well-being of our families in homeland. What we have learned in these 5 years should have already shocked the world consciousness. Millions of Uyghur are between detained 21st century concentration camp. They are subject to worst form of abuse, tortures, rape, sexual abuse, forced labor, surveillance, widespread in the concentration camp. In this context today, Summit could not have come at a more opportunity moment. With the Xinjiang police file being yet another wake up call for the international community to end its business as usual approach to China. Today, Summit also allows us to discuss actual steps that can be taken to the whole China to account. I'm therefore very honored to have this as a parliament member, EGO representatives, legal experts who have been at the forefront of this work. Chairman of the Uyghur Tribunal, Sir Jeffrey Nice, Vice Chair Nick Vich, Vice President of the Czech Senate, Year Oberfazer, and his colleague, Member of Parliament, French Parliament, Friedrich Dumas, our good friends, Ralph, Jana, Hanno, Mikhail, Sarah, Albert Göring, and some other lawmakers join us in the retrial. That we will hear from today have made crucial contribution to promote and defend human rights and freedom. Having worked with the distinguished speaker over the past year have been great privilege. Hearing, learning from them today, an immense opportunity, both of us, individual and human rights advocating, and the whole Uyghur community as a whole. Today's remarks and the panel discussion will guide 200 Uyghur diaspora leaders, scholars, activists, camp survivors from 20 countries in the conversation that we will have next 3 days. Expanded on the question and the best practice raised this morning, we will further seek to strengthen the cross-country cooperation, advocacy between different Uyghur groups and the organization. Key question will be addressed that will be marked response to Uyghur genocide in the period to come. How can we force companies to stop profiting from Uyghur hostages? What legal action can be taken against the company and the government alike to end their complicity? What allegiance exists to hold Chinese officials, Chinese government accountable for the crime? There are some of the important questions that will be discussed during the summit. Well, this week, we will have all been reminded of the brutal nature of Chinese government. Today about coming together, solidarity, exchanging view and ideas, and the fighting support each other, determination to bring extreme suffering to an end. Let us show humanity, compassion will always grow. Finally, I would like to thank Host Organization. This summit organized by 22 Uyghur organizations from the United States, Canada, Australia, Japan, and then from European countries. I wish all of us successful summit. Thank you. Selamünaleyküm hizmet arkadaşlar. Ben sözümün kısıkçı verdiğimden sizlerle ortak şey. Aziz mevzumuzda yuz berayotgan erkek qiyinchilikqa dunyoni qanday qilib o'yg'ota olamiz? Qanday qilib dunyoning istasini bizga qo'zg'ay olamiz? Qanday yo'llarni chiqarib bu masalani dunyoning tartibga keltiramiz degan o'xshagan nuqtalarda naydi muhim muzokara olib berilgan. O'tgan 4 yildan buyon nurg'unlagan ijobiy qadamlar besildi. Nurg'unlagan faoliyatlar olib berildi. Ko'z ko'rganlikdagi o'zgarishlarning dunyoda meydonga kelganligiga shohid bo'ldik. 9 parlament dunyoda va bir hukumat, hükümeti Uyghur provinsiyasini rasmiy qildi. Birleşken Devletler Teşkilatı'na 2018 yılında 11. ayda 14 devlet Uyghur meselesini kelgan bo'lsa, 2020 yılda kelganda bu devlet soni 3 ga yükseldi. Avrupa Parlamenti'nda 5 karar kabul kılındı. İlham To'xtayevaga Sakharov mukofoti berildi. Uyg'urlarni qo'llash dunyoning har joyida o'xshamagan ittifoq, o'xshamagan ideologiya, o'xshamagan eritmazlik bo'lgan insonlar orasida Uyg'urlarni qo'llaydigan jamiyatlar, tashkilotlar o'z yo'lini qurdi. 400 dan ortiq xalqaro tashkilotlar ishchilar uyushmasining tashkilishidan Uyg'ur majburiy emgakni to'xtatish xalqaro hamkorlik guruhi tashkillandi. Uyg'ur soti 18 oylik tekshirishdan keyin Şərqi Türkistan'da bo'layotgan Xitoyning jinoyatini erkak qirg'inchilik va insoniyat qarshi jinoyat deb hukm chiqadi. Mushu besimlar neticesida bugun Birleşken Devletler Teşkilatı'nın İnsan Hakları Oliy Komissari Michel Bachelet bizning vatanni mushu minutlarda ziyorat qilyotdi. Ammo bu ziyorat biz arzu qilgan, biz yillardan buyon talab qilgan bir ziyorat bo'lmaganligiga shohid bo'layapmiz. Bu neticelerinin barlık girişide bütün teşkilatlarımızdan, bir yerde bo'lmagan rehberlerimizden, faaliyetçilerimizden, şahsi yalnız kişilik faaliyet yapıp bağlan inkılapçılarımızdan bulup mu şu sorunda bo'lgan bugün Mişada bizden 5 nefer kamp şahitimiz, lager şahitimiz Mişada bularning oynagan naiti mühim rolleri oldu. Bu bunda hizmet kılan bütün qarindoshlarımızga rahmat aytamiz. Onundan bilan birga xalqaro matbuotlarning, Uyg'ur do'stlarining, xalqaro tadqiqotchilarning andiyazlarni o'xshaydigan naiti cho'ng to'pilari bo'ldi. Ammo Xitoy hukumati bu realliklarga davomli ko'z yumib, milyarlar 18, 16, 17 milyar dollar pul xarjlaganlik haqida nimamiz bor. Pullarni xarjlash orqali dunyoga yolg'on xabar tarqatishga, bu realliklarni dunyoning dikkatinden uzaklaştırışka, aldaşka örnek geldi. Ama bu hafta ilan kılan Şinjan Sakçı Arxivim dokulatı dünyanı başkasından bir silkindirdi. Dünyanın gözünü başkasından açtı. 5-6 yıldan bu yan bizlerinin davatının yepimizden doğru boğallığa dünya yeni bir katım şahit oldu. Dünyanı oygattı. İnşallah bu aldığımızda bu erkek kırgıncılığın toksuz için mühim bir materyal bulundu deb o'ylaymiz. Biz uchun yangilik emas. Biz bunu belki bu e'lon qilingan, oshkorlangan bizning vatanimizda bo'layotgan fojialarning 10 mingda biri. Ammo bir haqiqat bo'lishi, bir zulmning zulm bo'lishi u ayrim masala, ammo uni dunyoning shu shaklda qabul qilishi, faktlar bilan e'tirof qilishi ayrı bir masala. Shuning uchun texi oldimizga kirishga tegishlik nurg'unlagan ishlarimiz bor. Bu zulümlerini to'xtatish uchun qilishlik nurg'un xizmatlarimiz bor. Dunyodagi do'stlarimizni texnik ko'paytirishimiz kerak. Bugun bizga yillardan buyon da'vo xizmat qilib kelgan, bizni qo'llab kelgan nihoyat qimmatli chet ellik me'morlarimiz bor. Abiyatning ismini men istab o'tdim. Czech yuqori palatasining, Kengəş palatasining muavin raisi Jiri Oberfalzer efendim huzurimizda, Uyg'ur sotining qurg'uvchisi Jeffrey Nice efendim, Nick efendim bir yerde, Federic Buma bir yerde, Fransa parlamentosunun, Jana Kos kadarlık dostlarımız bir yerde, Ralf efendi, Mikhail Hano, Muşnuk okşaydıgan nurgun dostlarımız Mişade, Michael Mişade ve bir kısım dostlarımız bugün online arkalık, internet arkalık bizlerge hitap kıldı. Bu 3 günlük Milli Kengeş jarayonida 20 devletten kelgan 200'den artık faaliyetçiler, rehberler, mutaxassislar ciddi muzakara etiliş arkalık 101 vattan Uyghur erkek kızılığını kandak toxtutimiz. Xitay hükümetinin ve amaldarlarının bu cinayetini halkara kanun ve milli kanunlar dairesinde kandak cezaga tatalayımız. Halkara şirketlerini kandak kılıp mecbur ebekekten çekindirip çıkalayımız. Bütün dünya Ukrayna'ya sokuşda Rusya'ya elip bağandikidek iktisadi siyasi ambargolarını ceza tedbirlerini kandak kılıp Xitay'a mı emelde aşıralayımız. Kandak kılıp milletimizden erkinliği, vatanimizden hürlüğü, azatlık için tekimi tiz ve ünüm verdiğin yollarını tep çıkalayımız. Bu meseleler bu katımızda 3 günlük milli kengeşimizden müzakere temeleri bulundu. Bu vakıda baş katımız. İdeologimizin ne buluşudur? Köz karışımızın ne buluşudur? Birbirine nispeten söygümüz, nefretimizden kanda buluşudur. Kat'i nazar, bugünkü gün, bugünkü vakit hemini bir taraf kayırıp koyup, birbirimizni putlaş, birbirimizni şikayet kılış, birbirimizga hücum kılış emas, bütün neslerini karıplayıp, kanda kılıp, birlik, ittifaklıklısı da mağalayımız, halkımızga bir çıkış yolu tapalayımız, bir ekvattan deryada bir tamcı bulalayımız, bunu müzakere kılgan günümüz. Ben en ahırda bütün şu Milli Kengeş'e sahip kaldıktan 22 Amerika, Kanada, Avustralya, Japonya, Türkiye ve Avrupa'daki devletler bulup, 22 devlet bunun sahip kaldığını üstü aldı. 70'e yakın teşkilatlarımızın rehberleri katlaştı. Bunların hemisiga köptün köp rahmet eytimen. Yığınımızdan, milli kengeşimizden, milletimizge, halkımızga hayırlı buluşunu Cenab-ı Allah'ın dileğiyle. Rahmet olsun.
A huge thank you to our President Dolhunisa. It is now my pleasure to introduce you to Senator Jiří Oberfalzer. Jiří Oberfalzer is a Czech politician, and since 2018 he has served as the Vice Chairman of the Senate of the Czech Republic. Since 2010 he has served as a councillor and deputy mayor of the town of Kralov Dvor and as a member of the ODS since 1999. In 2021, the Czech Senate adopted and recognized the Uyghur genocide, and Mr. Oberfalzer was one of the supporters of this motion.
Tövende biz Jiří Oberfalzer, Çek siyasi arbabı 2018 yıldan başlap o Çek Cumhuriyeti Kengaş Palatasının muavin reisi hem de Çekiyanın Uyghur kırgınçılığını kabul kılışta nokul rol oynayan şahsını teklif kılmış.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me greet you in this morning and address you with several simple thoughts. The People's Republic of China has 55 different nationalities, and forms the majority, which is 91% of population. Why is the communist colossus afraid of remaining 9%? It's the natural desire of totalitarian regimes to unify, to colligate. Anything different is a source of danger if it is distinctive and self-conscious. In Europe, we have become used to the idea that diversity provides to the society its strengths and potential for development. Diversity enriches the whole. That is why we respect the civil society with a wide range of interests and stimuli. It provides the finishing touch to the portrayal of power and cultural structures of society and allows even minorities' interests to be treated and integrated into the global functioning of a given human community. Yes, diversity disrupts unity, or rather uniformity. But through the struggle of diversity, a higher value is created, a value that accommodates the different interests and strengthens their coexistence. A higher level of solidity emerges as it is formed by a rich web of bonds of the most diverse nature. The People's Republic of China doesn't want to understand this. In relation to the Uyghur minority, it shows how afraid it is of diversity. Instead of getting the Uyghurs in China on board to work toward a common future, it is trying to suppress their nature, to transform and indoctrinate them. It decimates the Uyghur minority and tries to turn the Uyghurs into Chinese. It behaves just like Adolf Hitler, who proclaimed the Germans to be superhuman and wanted the rest of the world exterminated, displaced, or re-educated. China's desire for absolute domination over its people amounts to an effort for absolute domination over the human mind and the human soul. The EU is built on the values of individual freedom and democracy. It has taken centuries to reach this status, but now it is in a fundamental clash with a world of totality, where the individual means nothing and the society means everything. I'm proud that the Council of Europe Parliamentary Assembly Award for Human Rights Advocates is named after our first democratic president after the fall of communism in Czechoslovakia, Václav Havel. In 2019, it was awarded to the Chinese advocate of the Uyghur minority, Mr. Ilhan Tohti. It's personalities like Václav Havel who we somewhat lack today. Today, in particular, we need spiritual leaders in democratic part of the world to remind us that we cannot make compromises with totality. It is not possible to reprehend criminals on the one hand and trade with them on the other. The West understood this on the case of the Russian aggressor. The only difference between Russia and China is that in Ukraine, the streams of blood are followed live on world's media. But in East Turkestan, everything happens behind a curtain, behind a Chinese wall, in the media shadows. Brutal violence, concentration camps, forced labor, decimation of culture, language, and religion takes place outside of the mainstream interest zone of international media, while the decimation of Uyghurs expresses clear feature of genocide. As with Russia, the West should end all trade and diplomatic relations with China until it stops this practice. We cannot play the blind fool and turn a blind eye to terror, pretending that trade is not involved. Every small concession to totality will help strengthen it in the end. The struggle of Uyghurs for freedom and the right to self-determination is a very long run. It may seem futile, hopeless, but we must not succumb to it. It has happened many times that what seemed impossible yesterday suddenly becomes reality. Who would have believed in 1980 that the Soviet Empire would collapse? And it happened 9 years later. Totality will always lose in the end because it contradicts human nature. However, we can lose the battle through our own indifference and inaction. freedom to Uyghurs.
Tövəndə biz Yerji Obal Farz əpəndinin sözünü qısqıç tərcüm qılıb beriş üçün Məhəmməd Toxta əpəndinin səhni təklif qılmız.
Qısqılam. Efendim deydi ki, Xitayda 55 millet var. Onun içinde 92% Xitay milleti. Nayta az sandıki başka milletler. Nime dep Xitay bu az sandık milletlerini özgü düşman gördü. Onun içinde Uygurlarını özgü düşman görüp onu yok dişini niyet kılıp şundak devlet siyaseti yürgüzüyordu. Çünkü bu hakim mutlak devletlerinin karakteri şundak. Bula köp xillikni yaxşı görmeydi. Köp xil, cemiyetdeki köp xil ranglarını yaxşı görmeydi. Okşamagan medeniyetler görmek kılmaydı. Her vakit özünün partiyasının ve hakim güçlerinin menfaatini birinci orun koyup başka özgü okşamaganlarını bastırıp gelgen. Bularda ortak mevcut buluş degen narsa mevcut emas. Şonlaşqa biz bulupma Xitay Xalq Cumhuriyeti bilen münasebet oynatqanda Xitayda aciz bolup atkan şu Uygurlar qartılgan ve başka milletler qartılgan okşamagan medeniyetler qartılgan düşmanlıkni unutup ketemeymiz. Xitaylarning bulupma Uygurlarga qılıp atkan her xil besimlerini oylaganımızda xuddi burun Germanlıklar favqulodda bir inson turi yaratgan güçüş Xitaylarni Uygurlarni bastırış arqılıq özünün Xitay nimesini güçlük orunda koyup başka milletlerini Xitaylaştırış rolunu oynawatıdı. Bularning birden bir maksidi özgü okşamaganlarını öldürüş ve özünün hakim mutlaqlık ornunu saqlap qilish. Şonlaşqa Xitaylarning hozir tutib atkan nimesi del burunqi Germanlarning başka faşist devletlerini tutqayılığı okşaydı. Uygurlarni Xitaylarning hozirgi yo'q qilish siyosatini mush nuqtadan tushunishimiz kerak. Lekin shuni unutib qolmaslik kerakki, Xitaylarning bu qilgan qilmishlaridan uzun muddatli natija elishi natayin. Dunyo hozir Uygurlarni bir kelganlarni bilyotidi va uni e'tirof qilyotidi. Shu burungi Chexoslovakiyadagi dangliq shaxs bo'lgan Václav Havel nomiga ta'sis qilingan mukofotni 2019-yili şu Václav Havelga o'xshash bir kishilik huquq faoliyatchisi bo'lgan İlham To'xtaga berdi. Her ikkinisining ideallari, g'oyalari o'xshashdi. Shunlashqa biz dunyoda shunday ruhiy rahbarlarning bo'lishiga ehtiyojimiz var. Yana bir jihatdan biz shuni unutmasligimiz kerakki, biz hargizmi o'sha hokim mutlaq davlatlar bilan bularning o'tkazgan jinoiy qilmishlari va bu jinoyatchilar bilan savdo qilmasligimiz kerak. Hazır Ruslarning şu Ukraynaga qilib qolgan tajovuzı medianın oldida bo'lyotidi, ammo Xitoyniki bilan Xitoyning Uyg'urlarga bo'lgan bostirish bilan Ruslarning Ukraynaga qilgan tajovuzlar o'rtasida ba'zi farq bor. Chunki Ukraynada eqiyotgan qonlar medianing jonliq taqitishi bilan ko'z oldimizga kelyotidi, lekin Xitoy Uyg'urlarni bostirishning pardining orqasidan ilib borayotgan boshqa nurg'un medialar bu yerga borolmayotidi. Hazır Uygurlar bo'layotganini nurg'un deb o'tib ketdik. Mecburiy emgakdan shu bosqinchilikcha, tajovuzgacha, milliy qirg'inchilik hammasi shunday bo'layotdi. Shunlashqa biz Xitoy bilan hargiz bu masalalarni murosasa qilmasligimiz kerak. Hazır Uygurlarni beshik kelgan bu zulmlarga ko'zimizni yepib turmasligimiz kerak. Uygurlar bilan doim hamkorlik uchun turishimiz kerak. Uygurlarning mustaqillik va o'z taqdirini o'zi belgilash orzusi balkim ko'plar uchun hozir bir amalga oshmaydigan xiyol deb bilinishi mumkin, lekin shuni unutmaslik kerak. Tunugin mumkin emas deb qaralgan nurg'un narsalar bugun reallikka aylandi. Sovetlar ittifoqining vayron bo'lishini hech kim kutmagan. Shunda bo'lg'achqa hokim mutlaq tuzumlar cho'qim mag'lub bo'ladi. Uygurlarning erkinligi cho'qim qo'lga keladi. Uygurlarga ozodlik.
It is now my pleasure to introduce you to our next guest, honorable guest, Sir Jeffrey Nice, onto the stage. Sir Jeffrey has been a chair at the Uyghur Tribunal starting 2020. Since 1971, he has served as a barrister, and between 1998 and 2006, he led the persecution of Slobodan Milosevic, former president of Serbia, at the UN International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia.
Tövəndə biz əziz mekinimiz Jeffrey Nice'ni səhni təklif qılmız. Jeffrey Nice Uyghur Sot Məhkəməsində rəis olğan, o 1971 ildən başlap advokat bolğan, 1998 ildən 2006 yılgacha bolğan aralıqda Serbiyanın sabiq prezidenti Slobodan Milosevic'nin sabiq Yugoslaviya BDT Xalqara Jinoiy ishlar soti javobgarlik tartilishida rəhbərlik qılğan. Qani mərhəmət.
Thank you for inviting Nick Vetch, Vice Chairman, and me to this meeting. I will break between sentences.
Meni ve mening dostlarım ve Katarlık dostlarımni çaqağınızlarga köp rahmet. Men cümlelerimni bölüp sözley.
On the World Uyghur Congress and all other Uyghur-based groups rests an enormously heavy responsibility.
Dünya Uyghur Kurultayı ve barlık Uyghur teşkilatlarının zimmisida nayet iğir bir mesuliyet var.
On you rests the responsibility for saving an ethnic group that is your relation on the far side of the globe from killing, from all known forms of persecution, from forced assimilation of one group into another, from destruction of a culture, loss of a language, and annihilation of an identity.
Çünkü sizler yer şarının o tarafında, uzak bir tarafı durgan, özanlar tava boğan gruplarını, yani özanlarını Uygurlarını kutkuzuş için uzak bir yerde hareket kılıvatsızlar. Çünkü sizler tava boğan bu Uygurlar, yani etnik grup, hazır dünya bilip yetken barlık cinayetinin kurbanı buluvatıdır. Bu cinayetler mecburi asimilasyadan milliy qirg'inchilikgacha bütün şekildeki şu medeniyetni vayron qilishdan başlap tilini vayron qilishgacha biz insoniyat tarixi bilgan bütün jinoyatlar sizlarga yuz beryapti.
Now, and for the time being, it is clear that you have very substantial support from NGOs, from individuals, from politicians, many of whom are gathered here today. And sometimes you have the support of a nation state, such as when the United States announced that there had been genocide, but without going so far as to provide the detail of why it was saying that.
Bugün sizlarni qo'llaydigan nurg'un gruppalarimiz maydonda bor. Buning ichida ommaviy tashkilotlar bor, anadan keyin shaxslar bor, dunyoda siyosatchilar bor, shunga o'xshash sizlarni qo'llayotgan milliy davlatlar bor, Amerikaga o'xshash, ba'zilari qonun orqali, ba'zilari boshqa shakllarda sizni qo'llab kelyapti.
And of course, even the support of the United States or any other major power will go nowhere as far in the protection of the Uyghurs of Xinjiang as, for example, it can go in respect of somewhere like Ukraine.
Shundaqdimi, masalan, Amerikadagi bir davlatning Uyg'urlarni himoya qilish uchun ilib borgan faoliyatlari qilishga tegishlik deb qaralgan majburiyatlar qaraganda uzoqda. Hazırmış Ukraynaga bo'layotgan qilayotgan yordamlarni hisobga olganimizda, hozirgacha berilgan yordamlar, berishga tegishli yordamlarning texim uzoq turadi.
And all these individuals, bodies and states that are not activist in your cause may lose power, lose interest, change direction, but your responsibility will continue. As I said, a heavy burden rests on your shoulders.
Bütün şu şahslar, devletler, bular siyasi faaliyetçiler emas. Bular bazı vaqtida himayesini to'xtatib qo'yishi mumkin, yoki fikrini o'zgartirishi mumkin, yoki ularning sizlarga bo'lgan himayesining yo'nalishi o'zgarishi mumkin. Lekin shunday bo'lsa, sizlar davomlashtirishinglar kerak bu kurashni, chunki mas'uliyatning ko'p qismi sizlarning zimmanglarda.
The contribution of the Uyghur tribunal that I chaired was and is different, for none of us is an activist in your cause. You may find that surprising, but it is both true, important, and valuable.
Bu Uyghur sotuning masalan, men reislik qilgan bu Uyghur sotuning rolimiz biroz farqli, chunki bu Uyghur sotidagi hech qaysimiz bir faoliyatchi emas yoki siyosiy aktivist emas. Buni men sizlarga ta'kidlab qo'ymoqchi.
9 individuals with no special interest decided that the question of what was happening to the Uyghurs should be looked at dispassionately, objectively, according to the strictest evidential tests, and that a judgment should be returned saying what has happened, what is happening, and what may happen. That is what we did.
Bu Uyghur sotidagi 9 nafar bu sotchi, bularning Uyg'urlar bilan bo'lgan hech qanday alayda bir manfaat bog'lanish yo'q. Bular faqat bo'layotgan hodisalarni so'roq qildi. Bu hodisalarga obyektiv ko'z bilan qaradi. Nim bo'layotdi, qanday faktlar bor, nimalar bo'lgan va nimalar bo'ladi, agar bunda davom qilaversa nimalar yuz beradi, mushularga obyektiv baho berib chiqdi.
If and as evidence develops, Nick Vetch and I may well be able to attend meetings where you are represented and to explain the evidential basis of our findings to date and possibly in light of additional evidence. And we hope that this may help in the discharge of the duties and responsibilities that fall on you.
Yani bundan keyin o'ttirib chiqadigan faktlar, dalillar agar bu taraqqiy qilaversa, bu Uyg'ur sotidagi nek va menga o'xshash qarindoshlaringlar buning yangidan qarab chiqib, ya'ni buni mas'uliyatini ado qiladigan davlatlarning mas'uliyatini ado qilish uchun ya'ni yangi rol ustimizga olishimiz mumkin.
Our assessment to date is that providing an objective judgment has been helpful, has served your purpose, and although we remain non-activists, in no way specialists concerned with your problem, because there are many other problems of a like kind, it will come as no surprise to you that we indeed wish you well.
Bizning hozirgi shu bo'layotgan ishlarga bo'lgan baharimiz sizlarning bundan keyin kelib boradigan da'volarga foydali bo'lishi mumkin, chunki bizning bu Uyg'urlar bilan alayda bir manfaat bog'lanishimiz yo'q va bizning alayda bundan bir oladigan foydamiz yo'q. Shunlashqa bizning sizlarga ta'minlab bergan shu hukmnoma va bu narsalar bundan keyingi shu ishlaringlarda favqulodda foydali bo'ldi. Sizlarga omad tilayman.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jeffrey. Before we continue, just a kind reminder for all of the guests to turn their phone on silent.
Tövəndə qeyrindaşlardan iltimasımız eğir kömək yığın jarayonida telefonlarını öçürüb etken bolsanlar yoki avazını öçürüb qoyğan bolsanlar. Rəhmət.
It is now my pleasure to introduce a dear friend of ours. Frédéric Dumas is a French politician and a member of the National Assembly for the Liberties and Territories. Frédéric Dumas submitted in June 2021 the proposal of resolution on the Uyghur genocide in the French National Assembly. She also serves on the Foreign Affairs Committee and the European Affairs Committee.
Tövende sehniga Friederike Duma xanım teklif qilamiz. Friederike Duma Fransiyalik siyosatchi, erkinlik ve territoriya davlat majlisining a'zosi. Friederike Duma 2021 yil 6 ayda Fransiya davlat majlisida Uyg'ur qirg'inchiligiga oid qaror teklifini sungan. U Tashqi ishlar komiteti va Yevropa ishlar komitetida xizmat qildi.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very proud to be here with you among friends now. And I would like to thank sincerely Dol Kunisa and Zumretai Akin. Following the judgment delivered last December by the Uyghur Tribunal chair by Sir Geoffrey Nice, who brought so much to the cause, following the recognition of this genocide by many countries which were able to give the example, like the United States, England, Canada, the Czech Republic, the French National Assembly has adopted last January and almost unanimously a motion which recognizes the genocidal character of politicians. We have to work closely with NGOs not to let people get arrested just because they are Uyghurs. And I would like to thank also Assal Kamraiva for all the great and efficient work she is doing in France right now, and also to thank Iveta, who is helping us in France. We have to fight against institutionalized forced organs harvesting in China and be sure we are not becoming accomplices through official cooperation agreements between French, for example, and Chinese hospitals. And I would like to thank Fiorella Luna, head of ITAC organization in France, for her work. We still need to request to freeze the European-China Comprehensive Multilateral Investment Agreement. To weigh in favor of all this with our respective governments, we must also take additional measures at the parliamentary level. It is indeed important to have binding legislative motions adopted which oblige the states to take action, as the United Kingdom House of Commons has chosen to do, for example, which has thus adopted consecutively the two following motions. On April 2021, a binding motion was passed calling Beijing treatment of Uyghurs and other minorities in Xinjiang a genocide. And on January 2022, a second motion asking the government to assess the serious risk of genocide in the light of the case law of the International Court of Justice and to present its conclusion within 2 months. This is also the path that Belgium has chosen to follow, foremost in Xinjiang. Everywhere where the refusal to open our eyes and impunity cause devastating effects. Our determination and our perseverance must be supported.
Merci Frédéric.
Eğer tercümeden imboz kapılmağına meşk gündüm bir uykusuz, rast kapınırsam, kallam qarangurun. Hanımның nimesinden kısaca tercümesini de yapayım. Dünya Uyghur Kurultayı'na reis Dolkunisa, Zümrüt'e başka dostlarga çok rahmet. Ötken dekabrda Geoffrey Nice efendi başçılık kılgan Uyghur soti Uyg'urlarning beşik kelgan oqibatlarini Uyg'ur qirg'inchiligi deb jakaladi. Uningdan burun nurg'un davlatlar Amerika, Angliya, Kanada, Chexiya va boshqa qilgan edi o'tgan yanvarda. Nimadimi Fransiya parlamentidimi Uyg'urlarning bu fojiasini ham insoniyat qarshi ishlangan jinoyat va irqiy qirg'inchilik deb e'tirof qildi. Bu qarorning ilinishi Xitoyga nisbatan kuchli bir signal. Biz her muddatda Xitoyning bu qilmishlarini ayblashdan va Xitoyning bo'ysunishga tegishli axloqiy va qonuniy mas'uliyatlarini xotirlatishdan chekinmasligimiz kerak. Bu inson bo'lishimizning bizga yuklagan bir mas'uliyat. Shundaq bo'lsa-mu, bizning eng muhim maqsadimiz Uyg'ur milliy qirg'inchiligini darhol to'xtatish bo'lishi kerak. Shunlashqa bizning harakatga o'tishimiz to'g'ri keldi. Avrupa Parlamenti şu 2022 yılı sentabrda mecburi emgek hakkında bir teklifini tayyorlayotdi, uni ovoz qo'yish uchun. Fransiya Avrupa Parlamentinin prezidentligini ustiga olgan, shunlashqa bizning bu haqida jiq emgak qilishimiz to'g'ri keldi. Yana birisi o'sha mecburi emgak deganda bu ta'minlash zanjiri, bu ta'minlash zanjiridan qaysi xaridlarni bo'ylab mangdiganligi, ishchilarning huquqi qatorliq nurg'un narsalarda yana dilo har bir şu to'shilgan mallarning izini sürüp import qilingan mallarning mohiyatini tekshirishimiz to'g'ri keldi. Shunlashqa biz importni kontrol qilish mexanizmlarini kuchaytirish bilan birga shirkatlarning va qonuniy mas'uliyatni ustiga organlarning mas'uliyatini surishimiz kerak. Shunlashqa bu yerdagi birdan-bir maqsad Uyg'urlarning huquqini qo'g'dash, Uyg'urlarni mecburiy emgak va davomlashayotgan qirg'inchilikdan saqlab qolish. Shunda bo'lsa-mu, hozir Fransiya yana shu o'tgan yil noyabrda men o'tirib qo'ygan va 49 millat vakili tarafidan o'rtaq imzolangan Fransiya parlamentida sunilgan Beijing Olimpik haqqida bir taklif bor, lekin u rad qilindi. Buni alayda eskartib o'tay. Shu Ukraina bilan Rossiya orasidagi bo'layotgan urush debdi, Rossiyaning Ukrainaga tajovuz qilish tragediyasi bizning ko'z oldimizda jarayon qilyapti. Nurg'un davlatlarda nurg'un ofatlar bo'lyapti. Biz bular bilan mashg'ul bo'lib, Uyg'urlarning bir kelgan bu fojialarni unutib qolsak bo'lmaydi. Shunlashqa biz qat'iy niyatda irodamizni kuchli namoyon qilib, qo'limizdan kelgan butun g'ayratlarni ko'rsatib, bu dramaning ko'zga ko'rinmas bo'lib qolishidan yoki ko'zimizdan uzoq bo'lib qolishining oldini olishimiz kerak. Interpolning muhim ishxonasi Fransiyaning Lyon shahrida. Shunlashqa biz boshqa ommaviy tashkilotlar bilan ishlab, bu Interpol bilan bo'lgan munosabatni, ularni kuzatishni davomlashtiramiz. Fransiyada bu haqida ishlayotgan tashkilot va shaxslar bor. Yana organ havsdan, yana organ setish savdosi haqida nima qildi? Anadagi Yevropa parlamentining Xitoy bilan Yevropa birligi o'rtasida imzolangan keng ko'lamlik ikki taraflik mablag' silish to'xtamnomasini to'xtatish haqida o tirishchanliklarimiz yana davom qilish kerak, toki bu to'xtamnoma tamoman kuchdan qolguncha. Yani onun o'xshash dunyoning hamma yerida bu xil harakatlar bo'lyapti, Belgiyada va boshqa yerda. Shunlashqa mening gapimni qisqartganda fojialar to'xtamadi, unda bu boshqa bizning vazifamizni to'xtamaslik kerak. Bu yig'inning shu masalalarni muzokara qilish jarayonini yaxshi bir xulosa kelishini va bizning bundan keyingi ilib borgan xizmatlarimizning bizga yetakchilik bir fikr, ideyalar bilan ta'minlashini orzu qilaman. Rahmat.
Next, we have a virtual remarks offered by the U.S. Ambassador to Germany, Amy Gutmann. As the current U.S. Ambassador to Germany, prior to this position, Dr. Gutmann was president of the University of Pennsylvania, a leading institution in international rankings. Named by Fortune in 2018 as one of the world's 50 greatest leaders. Dr. Gutmann has extensive business and leadership success, heading Philadelphia's largest private employer.
Aldı bilen Mehmet Toqtependi'ge çarçap ketken alatımı tercümanlık qilib bergani uchun chin ko'nglimizdan rahmat aytamiz. Tövende Amerika'nın Germaniya turuşluq baş elçisi Amy Gutmann hanım. Amy Gutmann Amerika'nın hazırki Germaniya turuşluq baş elçisi 2018 yılı Fortune tarafından dünyadaki 50 ulug' rehberinin biri bulup bahalangan. Amy Gutmann hanım bugün qadam tashrif qilamaganlik uchun bunu video orqali qo'yib berildi.
We are no longer who we once were. In the words of a Uyghur woman imprisoned for 2 years in a re-education camp, we were ordered to deny who we were, to spit on our own traditions and beliefs, to insult our own people. People like me who emerged from the camps are no longer who we once were. This testimony is part of an ever-growing body of evidence of the crimes against humanity and the genocide being perpetuated by the government of the People's Republic of China against the predominantly Muslim Uyghurs and members of other ethnic and religious minority groups. The World Uyghur Congress acts as a voice and an advocate for millions of Uyghurs and vulnerable populations under Beijing's brutal rule. I applaud the tireless efforts of the World Uyghur Congress and other groups who are advocating for human rights and change throughout China. They tell the harrowing stories of victims. They counter Beijing's false narratives and cover-ups. The U.S. government has implemented visa restrictions, export and import restrictions, and financial sanctions targeted at human rights violators in the Chinese government. We have taken concrete steps to promote accountability in Xinjiang. We have rallied allies to take joint action to ensure that all global supply chains are free from the use of forced labor. Sadly, the trend lines on human rights, as Secretary of State Blinken has said, continue to move in the wrong direction. Respect for human rights is what all decent societies stand for. Respect for human rights is also essential to global security and the well-being of all people. We steadfastly stand up against the atrocities committed by the Chinese government in Xinjiang. When we do so, we are defending among the most basic principles: freedom of religion and conscience, and respect for the dignity of all people. Working together, we can reverse these trend lines. We can protect the human rights of people everywhere. This we must do. This is who we are.
We thank Amy Goodman for the virtual remarks. The next speaker that we have, who unfortunately couldn't join us, is also offering her virtual remarks. It's Anna Fotyga, who is a member of the European Parliament and a Polish politician. She was also formerly the Minister of Foreign Affairs for Poland. She has also been the chief of the Chancellery of the Polish President. In 2014, she was re-elected to the European Parliament, where she co-led the Subcommittee on Security and Defense.
Tövende Avrupa Parlamenti əzası Anna Fotyga xanımını səhnədə təklif qılmız. Əskərtiş bu, Anna Fotyga xanım qədəm təşrif qılamığanlıq üçün videosu qoyub verildi. Anna Fotyga Polşalıq siyasətçi, 2014 yıl o Avrupa Parlamentiga saylanğan, o yerdə bexəterlik və müdafiə komitəsinin əzası.
Dear Uyghur friends, it is my pleasure and privilege to address this, although this very important event, the gathering in Munich of the Uyghur World Congress, here in the European Parliament, during numerous events, we used to raise the ongoing genocide happening to Uyghur community in Xinjiang province of the PRC and also in other parts of the country. We are aware of atrocities and suffering of women, men and children. That is why here in the European Parliament we decided to grant the Sakharov Prize, the most prestigious, important human rights award given by European institution for human rights defense. We are going to stand by you and to raise the issue of Uyghur community in every document that is necessary to adopt here at the level of the European Parliament. You have many friends over political divisions in Europe, and be sure of our support. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have a speaker who's among us today, is Jasna Kosovic, who is the advisor for genocide prevention and responsibility to protect at the Society for Threatened Peoples, a German-based NGO. She has worked for the Human Rights Department of the Society for Threatened People, and during her career, she has documented war and genocide crimes, especially in Bosnia-Herzegovina and neighboring regions.
Tövəndə biz Jasna Kosovic xanım səkni təklif qılmız. Jasna Kosovic irqi qırğınçılıqni aldın olish məsləhətçisi və xətarasızlıq millətlərini qoğdaş cəmiyyətinin əzası. Jasna Kosovic xətarasızlıq millətlər cəmiyyətinin kişilik hüquq bölümündə işləydi. O kəsbi həyatında bolubmu Bosniya və ətrafındakı rayonlarda uruş və irqi qırğınçılıq cinayətini xatırlagan.
Good morning. Guten Tag und Salam Alaikum. Dear President Orkun Issa, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for inviting me to speak at the conference on behalf of the Society for Threatened Peoples. Let me say, first of all, that although Russia's invasion of Ukraine has threatened to overshadow our work with and on behalf of the Uyghurs in East Turkestan and in exile, I believe that it has also helped us by drawing attention to the position of the Uyghurs alongside the people of Ukraine on the front line of our global concern about safeguarding peace, human rights, democracy, and the rule of law. The world faces a choice between the appeasement of authoritarian fascistic regime and the principled defense of peace, democracy, and human rights. The task that lies ahead of us is in many ways continuation of the work that we are already doing, but in a context of increased public awareness and also urgency. SDP has never given up on our campaigning to reform of international institutions, and in particular the reform of the United Nations Security Council needed to counter the threat and use of the veto by permanent members protecting their own interests, for example, in order to block referral of the Chinese authorities' alleged crimes to the ICC. Pending fundamental reform, we continue to press for alternative mechanisms to be explored. For example, involving greater input into security resolutions from the Security Council resolutions from the General Assembly as a whole. More specifically, we believe that the work of the Uyghurs Tribunal in London provides us with the basis for demanding the establishment of a special ad hoc international tribunal along the lines of the ICTV or the ICTR. Russia's suspensions from the Human Rights Council has shown us what can be accomplished. We, at Society for Threatened Peoples, have ourselves fought off the Chinese government's attempt to deprive us of our consultative status at the United Nations. Bullying can be resisted. Our work in Europe and Germany on individual cases and political campaigns has not always been easy, but we have achieved some encouraging results. We know that there is public support in Germany for stronger action, even when German economic interests may be affected. We have and will continue to urge the German government to work with its democratic areas to take measures aimed at deterring human rights abuses. In particular, we are lobbying the German authorities to follow the lead of countries like the Netherlands and the US and recognize that the crimes perpetrated against the Uyghurs and other predominantly Muslim Turk nationalities amount to genocide. International trade is a two-way relationship. Sanctions and boycotts do have an impact. We have been and are continuing to press the German government for tighter and more extensive personal sanctions at EU and national level against Chinese officials responsible for the oppression of the Uyghurs population, including members of the Central Committee of the Chinese Communist Party. We are also calling for the systematic implementation of ILO standards and on forced labor in EU member states' commercial relations with China. We believe that delays in ratifying the terms of the EU-China Comprehensive Agreement on Investment indicate considerable support within European institutions for the strengthening the agreement in this regard. We are lobbying German politicians to support EU-wide supply chain legislation outlawing the import of products and forced labor. The suspension of Nord Stream 2 has shown us that nothing is impossible. Along with other campaigning organizations, we pressed for German participation in the diplomatic boycott of the Beijing Winter Olympics. Our lobbying on German politicians has revealed considerable support for the Uyghur cause in spite of Germany's strong trade links with China. We believe that the situation in Ukraine shows the importance of a firm and united international stance, not just over the treatment of the Uyghur population, but also over human rights concerns relating to Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Tibet. Within Germany, our efforts have focused in particular on trying to persuade German companies reliant on China-sourced manufacturing of goods and components to wean themselves of dependence on the exploitation of forced labor. We have also highlighted the role played by the Confucius Institutes in seeking to influence intellectual activity in German academic institutions and have called for a federal-level inquiry into all aspects of the Chinese Communist Party's attempts to influence policy and opinions in Germany. Looking ahead, of course, our first aim must be to prevent genocide and end the criminal persecution of the Uyghurs and other oppressed groups in East Turkestan and elsewhere under Chinese Communist Party rule. The camps must be closed, discriminatory practices ended, and exiles allowed to return home and rejoin their families. At the same time, though, we will continue to press for stronger national action on human rights across all areas of official and commercial relations with China. Thank you very much. Rahmet und Kudaimaga. Thank you.
Yasna Hanım'ın sözünün kısaca tercüme. Şakağının meni davet kılığınla köp rahmet. Men Xatar astidagi millatlar tashkiloti, Germaniyada Xatar astidagi millatlar tashkilotiga vakolatan bu konferansda so'zlayapman. Shuni deb o'tishni loyiq ko'raman. Garchi Rossiyaning Ukrainaga bo'lgan tajovuzi bizning Sharqi Turkistonlik Uyg'ur va boshqalar uchun qilayotgan xizmatlarimizga belgilik ko'langa tashlagan bo'lsa-mu, lekin yana bir tarafdan shuning ishimizki Ruslarning bu mushtumzorligi Uyg'urlarni beshik kelgan fojia bilan Ukraina xalqining oldingi safda elayotgan kurashlarini birlashtirib tushunganimizda kishilik huquqni, inson huquqlari, demokratiya va qonun orqali davlat boshqarishni kuchlantirishning qanchalik muhimligini ko'z oldimizga namoyon qilib turibdi. Hozirgi dunyo bir tanlash oldi turdi. Bu tanlash hakim mutlaq davlatlarni xo'sh qilish yoki faşistik rejimlarni xo'sh qilish bilan tinchlikni, demokratiya va kishilik huquqni himoya qilish prinsipi o'ttirida bo'layotidi. Aldığımız turayotgan vazifa nurg'un jihatlardan o'zimizning xizmatlarni davomlashtirish va bu mazmunda texnik ko'p jamoat fikrini uyg'otish va jiddiylik yaratish xizmatidan iborat. Biz xatar astidagi tashkilot, xatar astidagi millatlar tashkiloti bo'lish salohiyatimiz bilan Birleşken Devletler Teşkilatı'nın teşkilatı ıslahat ilip biriş hakkındaki talebimizni hazır to'xtatib qo'ymadik. Bo'libmi Birleşken Devletler Teşkilatı bexatarlik kengashidagi davlatlarning o'ziga qarshi bo'lgan har qanday qarorlarni veto qilish huquqini qayta talash tortishga ichishimiz kerak. Masalan, Xitoy hukumatining hazır ilip Uyg'urlarga qarata ilip berayotgan erkak qirg'inchilik masalasi o'tirib qo'yilganda Xitoy o'zining jinoyatini sürüştü qilish va bu jinoyatlarni bekitish haqidagi talash tortishlarni to'sab qolinmasligi kerak. Yana birisi şu Birleşken Devletler Teşkilatı bexatarlik kengashining olgan qarorlarida yalnız 5 doimiy a'zodan boshqa umumiy kurulning, yani umumiy kengashning bu kengashga a'zo davlatlarning bu jiqroq söz salohiyatini qo'lga keltirish uchun tirishimiz kerak. Shunda olganda bu Uyghur sotining, Londondagi Uyghur sotining bizga ta'minlagan paketlari Birleşken Devletler Teşkilatı'da bu shunday bir islohotni ilib berishning nihoyatda muhimligini ko'z oldimizga keltiryapti. Gerçi Xitoyning tashkilotimizga ilib bergan har xil besimlar bo'lsa-mu, biz bo'zaq qilishlardan va boshqa har xildagi tahdidlardan qo'rqib qolmaymiz. Biz Yevropada ve Germaniyada ma'lum shaxslar qartilgan ve siyosiy safarbarligimizni, ma'lum shaxsiy dilolar qartilgan siyosiy safarbarligimizni texmo kuchlantirib ilib boramiz toki natijagacha. Biz shuni bilamizki, ko'proq jamoat himoyasi bo'lganda va jamoatning qo'llashi bo'lganda Germaniyaning Xitoyga bo'lgan siyosatini o'zgartirishmo unchalar tas emas. Biz to'xtamasdan Germaniya hukumatining dunyodagi boshqa demokratik davlatlar bilan hamkorlashib Xitoyni hozirgi siyosatidan yondiradigan bisimlarni davomli ilib berishga Germaniyani chaqiriq qilamiz. Shunaqla Germaniya hukumati bilan hozir biz lobby faoliyatini ilib beryapmiz. Germaniyaning Gollandiya va Amerikaga o'xshash Xitoyning Uyg'urlarga yurgizayotgan milliy qirg'inchilik va insoniyatga qarshi ishlangan jinoyatini e'tirof qilishi va shundaqla xalqaro sodadagi ikki taraflamalik munosabatni, ya'ni jazo yurgizish va boykot qilishning nihoyatda ta'siri bor bir tadbir ekanligini Germaniya hukumatining samiga septiryapmiz. Shuna bo'lganda hozir Yevropa Birligi saviyasida Xitoy hukumatlariga o'sha Uyg'ur milliy qirg'inchilik munosabati Xitoy hukumatlariga jazo yurgizgan ba'zi jazolar yurgizyapti. Buning ichida Xitoy Kommunist partiyasining Merkez Komitetining ba'zi a'zolari bor. Şunun bilan birga yana biz xalqaro emgak tashkilotining shu emgak o'lchamlarini bo'libmi Yevropa Birligiga a'zo davlatlarga kirayotgan savdo mollarining majburiy emgakdan kirgan kirmaganligi, Yevropaning emgak o'lchamlari bo'yicha ishlangan ishlanmaganligi bu mollarning mushaqqatdagi tekshirishni bu kuchlantirishimiz kerak, chunki nurg'un qonuniy bo'shliqlar bor. Şu Germaniyaning Rossiyadan aldıgan tabiiy gazni bekor qildi, bular Nord Stream 2 degan. Shuni bekor qilishga jur'at qilganligi demakki biz safarbarlikni yaxshi qilsak, tashkilotchilikni yaxshi qilsak, besimni kuchlantirsak, Germaniyada ba'zi ishlarning bo'ldiganligini, Germaniyaning bu aqlliq bilan qaror beradiganligini bundan ko'ra olamiz. Biz yana Ukrainaga ko'rsatgan hissdoshligimizni va yordamimizni nihoyatda kuchli holda Uyg'urlarga, shundaqla Tayvan, Hong Kong, Tibet qatorliqlarga bu qo'llashimizni ko'rsatishimiz lozim. Hozir Germaniyada bizning qilayotgan faoliyatlarimizning yana birisi German şirketlerinin Xitayga Xitayda işlengen mallarının terkibide olup mu Germaniyada kirib atkan mallarının Xitayga tayinip qilish nisbetining iğirligi ve bunu qandaq tövelletiş meselesi. Çünkü Xitaydan kelgen mallarının köplerinin mecburi emgekten işlengenligini biz obdan biliriz. Şoňlaşqa yalğız biz bular bilen qanmasdan Kongressi institutlarının ve ularning ta'sir doirasini kengayishini oldin olish uchun Germaniyada aqluşida teşkilatlar bilen ve akademik seviyedeki insanlar bilen mi Xitay Komünist Partisining tehditlerini yaxshi tushundirish, Germaniyaga bularning uzun müddet paydo qilgan ziynini yaxshi tushundirish uchun ishlashimiz to'g'ri keldi. Oldimizga nazar solganda milliy qirg'inchilikni oldini olish eng muhim xizmatlarning birisi. Hozir Uyg'urlar hem bisim uchrayotidi, hem milliy qirg'inchilik uchrayotidi, hem her türlü jazolarga uchrayotidi. Shuna bo'lg'achqa bu jazolarning hammasi Uyg'urlarning beshik kelganlar bu fojialarning hammasi Xitoy Kommunist Partiyasining hokimiyatidan kelyotidi. Bu kamplar cho'qim taqilishi, Uyg'urlar qaratilgan bu ayrimchilik ve bu zulm siyosati tugishi, anadan keyin bu chet elda yashagan Uyg'urlarning oilasi bilan jam bo'lishiga ruxsat qilinishi kerak. Bu bir insoniy talab. Şunu bilan birga biz texnik kuchlik ve qattiq bo'lishimiz kerak. Kishilik huquq biz qo'g'dimisak bo'lmaydigan, ishlamasak bo'lmaydigan naytim muhim bir soha. Buni hargiz ko'zimizdan, nazarimizdan uzoq qilolmaymiz. Rahmat.
Thank you, Mehmet Tohti. Thank you, Yasna, as well, for the remarks. Next, we have another guest who couldn't join us here today, who is Ms. Young Kim, who is a representative in the U.S. House of Representatives in the Republican Party. She is one of the first Korean-American women ever to serve in Congress, having the role of advisor on issues pertaining to the Asian American community and foreign policy. In 2021, she has introduced the Uyghur Policy Act in Congress to protect the Uyghur refugees and the Uyghur community.
Tövende Young Kim Hanım'ın videosu koyup verildi. Young Kim Hanım Amerika Avam Palatasının vekili. Yaş Kim, Cumhuriyetler Partisi'nin siyasi erbabı. O parlamentte vazif ötegen tuncu Koreya Amerika ayallarının biri. O Asya Amerika Cemiyeti ve taşkı siyasetlik münasebetlik meselelerde mesleği rolunu aldı. Onundan başka o yana Uyghur siyasi kanunu layihasini Amerika Avam Palatası'da tonuşturulatıdı ve bununki en kısa vakitte emelileştiriş için zor güç çıkarılatıdı.
Hi, I'm Congresswoman Young Kim. I'm honored to be with you all, joining virtually at this Uyghur Strategy Summit, and I'm grateful for all the work that you do to raise awareness and action in support of Uyghurs in Xinjiang and around the world. As you know, the Chinese government has carried out a systematic genocide in Xinjiang, and I've heard heart-wrenching and horrible personal testimonies from survivors and instructors from the camps, which have held up to 1.8 million people since 2017. We have heard verified accounts of systematic rape, forced sterilization, inhumane conditions in detention camps, brainwashing techniques, and torture. That is why I introduced the Uyghur Policy Act, which would create a multilateral diplomatic strategy to counter the CCP's genocide in Xinjiang by appointing a special coordinator for Uyghur issues and preparing our foreign service officers to meet the challenges in the region. We must wake up and recognize that the CCP is fully committed to leveraging oppression, culture, and genocide to further its geopolitical ambitions and economy. We cannot be complicit and must deal with the PRC government we have, not the one we want. While the CCP spouts propaganda, each of us must come together in strong support of those who are trapped under their control in the years to come through congressional action, corporate responsibility, and morality. I will continue to stand in fierce opposition to the CCP's human rights violations and ensure that the atrocities committed result in steep financial and political costs for the Xi regime.
Thank you to Representative Kim. Next, we have a member of the European Parliament, Engin Eroglu, who is on the Committee on Economic and Monetary Affairs and the Committee on Foreign Affairs of the European Parliament. He's also a member of the delegation to the EU-Kazakhstan, EU-Kyrgyzstan, EU-Uzbekistan, and EU-Tajikistan Parliamentary Cooperation Committees.
Tövende Avrupa Parlamentining a'zosi Engin Eroglu efendining videosi qo'yib berildi. U Iqtisod va Pul ishlar komiteti va Tashqi ishlar komitetining a'zosi.
Einen herzlichen Gruß nach München zum World Congress der Uiguren. Ich wäre sehr gerne bei Ihnen, bei euch gewesen, wenn schon mal der Kongress in Deutschland stattfindet. Leider bin ich verhindert. Umso wichtiger ist es mir, Ihnen heute hier ein Grußwort zu sprechen, viel Erfolg für diesen Kongress zu nennen, denn er ist so wichtig wie denn je. 2004 hat die Volksrepublik China die Menschenrechte in die Verfassung geschrieben, in 2 Jahren für 2 Jahrzehnte. Das eine ist, was die Volksrepublik spricht und schreibt, und das andere ist das Handeln. Das Leid der Uiguren ist unbeschreibbar. Folter, Zwangsarbeit, Zwangssterilisierung. Viele Länder der Welt sprechen von einem Genozid. Auch ich im Europäischen Parlament spreche von einem Genozid. Leider ist es so, dass wir es im Europäischen Parlament im Gegensatz zu anderen Ländern noch nicht geschafft haben, es mal offiziell als Parlament als Genozid zu bezeichnen, was ein Genozid ist. Ich weiß, dass Ihnen, euch das besonders am Herzen liegt, dass wir dieses hier im Europäischen Parlament aussprechen. Ich werde alles in meiner Hand Liegende auch tun und machen, dies bis zum Ende der Periode hinzubekommen. Ich glaube, es ist sehr wichtig, dass das Europäische Parlament das, was in China passiert, als Genozid darstellt, denn es schafft einen Rechtsrahmen und aber auch eine große Unterstützung, einen großen Druck auf die Volksrepublik, diesen Genozid so schnellstmöglich zu beenden.
Vielen Dank.
Distinguished guests, ladies
next we have a very good friend of ours, Mr. Ralph Bunche, who is the General Secretary for the Unrepresented Nations and Peoples Organization. He's been serving for this organization for many years, and he's also the head of Cornwall Brussels office, working on a range of European Union policy matters. And the World Uyghur Congress is also one of the co-founding members of UNPO.
Tövende biz Ralph Bunche efendimni sahnaga taklif qilamiz. U Vakolatsiz Millatlar va Xalq tashkilotining bosh kotibi, u yana Cornwall Brussels ishxonasi CBO'ning mas'uli, u Yevropa ittifoqining bir qator siyosat ishlarida ishlaydi.
Am I going to get do you want to translate me?
Yes.
So I'm going to go sentence by sentence because I don't have my speech written for you. Sorry. Sorry. It's okay?
Go ahead.
Okay. Thanks for having me here. I was at the Uyghur Summit in November 2018. You will recall what it was like, and I think a lot of you were there. We met in a hotel just up the road in a basement. It was dark, there were no windows, there were virtually no supporters compared to what we've had today talking about the Uyghur cause. Dolkin Issa had just had his red notice deleted. He was only just then free to move around Europe. And the feeling was one of desperation to be heard about your cause.
Ben 2018 yıldaki tuncu katılımlık Milli Kengeş katnaşkan. O katnaşkan zal, mışı yakın etraftaki bir zaldı, mındak çoğun emesti, yarastı kavetti. Derizlerimi yoktu. Bu yerik insanlar bundak cıkma emesti, silahını kolluk uçular bundak küçük emesti. Dolkin İsa'nın Interpol tutuş buyruğu emdila emelden kaldırılgan. Lekin köplerde bir deli bir ensiraş şu his duygu hakim edi.
So it's incredible to be here in this beautiful room today, in this great hall, because I think, like the organizers of this conference, You all, each one of you, have brought the Uyghur cause into the light.
Mishad oltoğa her birіңla, xuddi mush zalning yorug'idek Uyg'ur davosini texmi yoruq chiqishiga tuhfa qo'shdinglar.
And it is you. It's your hard work, it's your dedication, it's your sacrifice. Organizations like the UNPO, and if they'll forgive me, the Society for Threatened People, and the Uyghur Tribunal, and all of the policymakers like Federica Dumas, who are here helping and pushing back against the genocide that's happening to you. All of us, we help you, but it's because of you that these changes have happened.
O fakat sizlarning g'ayratinglar, sizlarning tirishchanliginglar, sizlarning fidokorliginglardan bu natijalar qo'l keldi. Mayli men bo'lay, Duma Efendi olsun yoki Uyg'ur soti bo'lsin, bizning qilayotgan ishlarimiz garchi sizlarga yardım bo'lgan bo'lsa-mu, lekin asosli xizmatni sizlar qilganinglar uchun biz sizlarning qilgan xizmatinglarga inkos qaytarib sizlarga yardım qildik. Shunlashqa bu tirishchanlik, bu xizmatlar sizlarga tabi.
I hope that gives you some hope and keeps you going. I hope you're able to see that you've made change for your people. And I hope it keeps you going as you push to try and take the words that the international community are now saying and turn them into action.
Şunlaşqa ümidni yo'qotib qo'ymaslik kerak. Ya'ni xalqaro jamoatning shunday yordamlari bo'lyapti. Ya'ni bu g'ayratni davomlashtirish kerak. G'ayrat va umid ikkisi shunday davomlashgan sari sizlarga bo'lgan qo'llash texmi kuchli bo'ldi. Bu kuchli qo'llashdan harakat maydon keldi.
Because now you're hitting the hard part. To turn those words into action is going to be hard. If you think only about the challenges that you have here in Germany, for those of you who are in Germany, you can see how hard it is. You have Uyghurs living in Germany who are suffering from harassment by the government, trying to stop you from speaking. You have, as was mentioned by my colleague from the Society for Threatened People, Confucius institutes sowing discord amongst all of the politicians here and all of the academic community. And then you have just a few hundred kilometers away in Duisburg, directly from Urumqi, where the government of Germany is putting billions into the building of this rail port to outcompete all of the rest of Europe to receive goods. And all of those things stop the government from acting on your behalf.
Hazır hamda sizning vazifanglar texmi ig'ir. Berilgan va'dalar, qilingan ishlarni harakatga aylantirish vaqti. Bularni Germaniyada yashagan bo'lsanglar, shuni his qilyapsizlar. Germaniyada shunday qiyinchiliklar bo'lyapti. Xitoyning shu yaqin atrofida Joyston degan yerda bir cho'ng setib olgan portmi bir narsa bor o'xshaydi. Har kuni, har yil degandek milliardlarcha dollarlik mol o'sha kelyapti. Hammasi bizning vatandan keldi. Shunda bo'lganda shu faoliyatni harakatga aylantirib, kuchli harakatga aylantirmasak, o sodani qo'llayotgan bizning kuchliklarni biz yengolmaymiz, shunlashqa texmi ishlash zamoni.
So it's going to be hard. This pattern is repeated across the world. You all know this. And it's repeated because the government knows that you are powerful, that it knows that your voices work. So we at the UNPO, we're here to help you. We want to help you push back against these problems.
Bundan keyingi ishni tasdiqlashimning sababimi hukumat biladi, sizlarning kuchinglarning qanchalik kuchli ekanligini. Shu vakolat millatlar tashkilotimi har jihatdan sizlarga yordam qilamiz. Shuna bo'lsa-mu, hukumatning shu hozirgi siyosatini nima qilish uchun texmi chin ishlashimiz va texmi kuchli bo'lishimiz kerak.
We have a campaign that we're leading now to build a coalition of policymakers, of lawyers, of NGOs to protect you and to respond when you're under threat by the government here, living in your countries.
Germaniyada hozir shu siyosatchilar, anandan ommaviy tashkilotlar, advokatlar, nurg'un organlar sizlar bilan birga ishlab, sizlarni qo'llab shunday qilyapmiz.
And we have a program to push back against the influence of the Belt and Road Initiative all over the world, to try and highlight where it is changing the discourse at the national level and preventing governments from taking real action.
Yani şu Germaniyada ve başka yerge kartılgan bizden hazır kampanyamız var. Xitayning şu bir belvaq bir yol kampanyasını to'xtatish uchun mushulardımı bizden kılıvatkan emeli hareketlerimiz var.
Zumratay mentioned that the UNPO was founded by the Uyghur people in 1991, by the Uyghurs, the Tibetans, and the Estonian people. We consider ourselves in part to be a Uyghur organization. You, the Uyghur organizations through the World Uyghur Congress, own a part of our organization.
Tercüme kılsam bolduken koyma oluşanım sizler. Zümrət aydab ketdi, UNPO'nun Vakalsiz Millətlər Təşkilatının qurğuşuluşunda Uyğurlar var. Həqiqətən Tibet, Estoniyalik və Uyğurlar bu Vakalsiz Millətlər Təşkilatını qurğan. Şonlaşqa biz Vakalsiz Millətlər Təşkilatı eyni vaxtda özümüzni Uyğur Təşkilatı deyə qarayırıq.
So we are with you over the next, we are with you, we will always be with you. I sincerely hope that the outcomes of this summit are as successful as the outcomes of the last, and that in 4 years' time from today, we can say that we've made real progress in freeing the Uyghur people.
Bu Ali Kengeş'inlerin muhabbetlik oluşunu dileymen. Muhabbetlik oluşumuz bu kolumuzun kelgen işleyimiz. Bunun için 4 yıl keyin oylag'animizda texmi köp neticelerini ko'rgan bo'layli. Ben samimiy holda shuni umid qilaman.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ralph, and to Mehmet Orti as well. So next we have another guest who could not join us today, but he has kindly offered his virtual remarks. It is Zdeněk Hryb, who is the mayor of Prague. He is also a member of the Czech Pirate Party and was inaugurated as mayor of the Czech capital in November 2018. He is a member of several working groups at the ministerial level, the World Health Organization, and the European Union. He is also a member of the European Committee of the Region since 2019. Mr. Hryb has also kindly hosted us in November 2021 in Prague for our 7th General Assembly.
Tövende biz Praga şehir başlığı Zdeněk Hryb efendinin videosunu koyumuz. Zdeněk Hryb Çex Deniz Qaraqçıları Partiyasının əzası olub, 2018 yıl noyabrda Çex paytaxtı şehir başlığı süpütüdü vəzifəyə oldurğan. O minister dərəcəlik Dünya Səyahət Təşkilatı və Avropa Birləşməsindəki bir qancha xizmət qrupusының əzası. Hryb efendi 2019 yıldan başlap Avropa Rayonluq Komitetining əzası, onundan başqa bulturqi qurultayda bütün qurultay vəkillərə özünün sarayında axşam ziyafəti bergen.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to greet you at least this way since I cannot be in Munich with you. I'm very happy that the World Uyghur Congress chose Prague to host its 7th General Assembly last year, and that I had the privilege to participate in the event. The assembly attracted a lot of attention both in the Czech Republic and internationally. I find it immensely important to keep highlighting the gravity and urgency of the oppression of the Uyghur people. Since February, Prague has been shocked by the atrocities caused by Putin's Russia in Ukraine. This horrifying experience is a reminder of how vital it is to fight for human rights and civil liberties globally. The persecution and pressuring of people for political reasons on the basis of their religion or ethnicity is simply unacceptable, and it is a disgrace for humanity. This is also the case in regards to the treatment of the Uyghur people in China. I wish all the best to the Uyghur people, and I hope that the international attention is going to help improve the treatment of your community.
Yekuive for Mr. Hryb. Our next guest is also joining us virtually. It is Michael McDowell, who is a senator at the Irish Senate and is an independent representative for the 26th Irish Senate. He has been the Irish Minister of Justice and Attorney General in the past. And in 2022, he has introduced the Uyghur Tribunal motion in the Irish Senate, which was adopted.
Tövəndə biz Michael McDowell efendiminin videosunu görmüz. O bolsa İrlandiya Kengəş Palata əzası. İrlandiya Kengəş Palata əzası Michael McDowell hazır 26-cı İrlandiya Senatının müstəqil vəkili. O İrlandiya Ədliyyə Ministri və baş təftiş bolğan və 2022-ci il İrlandiya parlamentində Uyghur irqi qırğınçılığının maqullanışında zor tirişçanlıqlarını göstərgan.
Good morning and greetings from the Irish Senate, Shannon, the upper house of the Irish Parliament. It's my great pleasure to address you at the Uyghur Summit today in Munich. Last December, I took the step of circulating Sir Geoffrey Nice's report of the Uyghur Tribunal to every member of the Irish Parliament. And we did that in hard copy and 220 parliamentarians received it. We followed this up by tabling a resolution in the Irish Senate calling on the Senate itself to accept the findings of the Uyghur Tribunal. That motion was unanimously passed by the House on the 9th of February, and it serves to bring further attention to the ongoing plight of the Uyghur Muslim population in Xinjiang province. I am acutely aware that the war in Ukraine has had the effect of shifting the spotlight away from what is happening to the Uyghur population in Xinjiang province at the moment, the continuing genocide that is occurring there. But I want to assure you that your friends in the Irish Parliament haven't forgotten you and will continue to campaign vigorously, both in Ireland and in Europe, for recognition of the plight of the Uyghurs and for determined action to be taken to stop the genocide of the Uyghur population. Lastly, I want to say this. We met your President, Dalkun Isa, and his colleagues in Leinster House here recently, and we learned from them at first hand the appalling things that are happening in Xinjiang province to your fellow countrymen. And I want to just tell you that we are with you completely. We haven't forgotten you. And above all, I want to say this. I want to wish every success to your conference in Munich.
Our next guest could also not join us today, but she is here virtually. She is the Vice President of the European Parliament, Ms. Heidi Hautala. Since 2017, she's been serving as the Vice President of the European Parliament. She has also led the Ministry for International Development in Finland and carried out different political activities.
Tövəndə biz Heidi Hautala xanımның videosunu görürüz. O bolsa Avropa Parlamentinin muavin prezidenti. 2017 yıldan başlap Heidi Hautala Avropa Parlamentinin muavin reislik vəzifəsini atqırıb kelyaptı. O yana Finlandiyanın taraqqiyat ministri bolğan ayol.
Dear friends, first of all, I would like to thank the World Uyghur Congress and NGO representatives for inviting me to your summit in Munich. I'm very pleased to see that you will be discussing, among other topics, in your three-day event, corporate responsibility. I remain deeply worried about the fact that the human rights situation of the Uyghurs is deteriorating drastically. The Chinese government has long been known for its human rights violations, and we have seen similar developments in Tibet, aiming to destroy the region's cultural and religious heritage and freedoms. As we know, several EU companies are in the public eye because of profiting directly or indirectly from human rights abuses through supporting forced Uyghur labor in their supply chains. Acknowledging the EU's continuous and outspoken commitment to respect human rights in all its international activities, including trade policy, I believe that it is crucial to keep this issue high on the political agenda. The EU, together with the United States, Australia, Canada, and others, have a major opportunity to show global leadership in how to address supply chain complicity in Uyghur forced labor through a few topical legislative instruments in the EU. The European Commission's proposed Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive, as well as the ban on forced labor, which we are expecting to happen soon, are two powerful instruments in the EU's toolkit to enhance the situation of Uyghurs, as well as to remedy other corporate abuses all around the world. The EU due diligence legislation would affect not only in the EU but also globally to hold EU's trading partners accountable. It's finally time that European companies and those trading in the EU take measures to respect and defend human rights and fight modern-day slavery. Let me wish you all a successful summit and generative discussions, and let them stay in touch. Thank you.
Our last guest speaker is Frank Schwabe,
Sehr geehrter Herr
who is a
Präsident.
member of the German Bundestag, German Parliament, and he currently holds the position of Federal Government Commissioner for Freedom of Religion and Belief.
Ahırkı videomuz olsa Frank Schwabe efendimninki videosu. Frank Schwabe, Germaniya parlamentinin azası, o hazır Federasiya hükümetinin din ve itikat erkinlik komissarı.
Sehr geehrter Herr Präsident Isa, sehr geehrte Damen und Herren. Ich bedanke mich ganz herzlich für die Einladung zur Veranstaltung in München und wäre natürlich gerne bei Ihnen. Das klappt aber heute leider nicht. Wir werden das aber so schnell wie möglich nachholen. Beauftragter für die Bundesregierung für Religions- und Weltanschauungsfreiheit bin ich ja nun erst seit wenigen Monaten. Allerdings beschäftige ich mich mit der Lage der Uiguren in China schon deutlich länger, spätestens seit ich Mitglied im Ausschuss für Menschenrechte und humanitäre Hilfe des Deutschen Bundestages bin, und seitdem sind wir auch in regelmäßigem Austausch. Die Situation der Uiguren in China hat sich in den letzten Jahren weiter dramatisch zugespitzt. Nach wie vor leiden die Uiguren unter den massiven Repressionen der chinesischen Regierung. China geht systematisch gegen die uigurische Minderheit vor, in voller Brutalität. Die Berichte beispielsweise über Abtreibungen und die sogenannten Umerziehungslager sind verstörend. Sie hatten es schon immer schwierig als Uiguren in der Volksrepublik China, aber in den letzten Jahren ist das uigurische Volk mehr und mehr massiver Unterdrückung und Gewalt ausgesetzt. Unter dem Deckmantel der Terrorismusbekämpfung gehen chinesische Behörden brutal gegen sie als muslimische Minderheit vor. Besonders bedrückend sind die Berichte über die bis zu 1 Million Uiguren, die eben in Lagern interniert wurden, beschönigend Umerziehungslager genannt. Doch es wird mehr als deutlich, welchen Zweck diese schrecklichen Einrichtungen erfüllen sollen. Nichts anderes als die Auslöschung der uigurischen Sprache, der muslimisch-uigurischen Religion, der gesamten uigurischen Kultur. Vor allem für sie, die um ihre Angehörige bangen und trauern müssen, muss die Situation unvorstellbar schwierig sein. Zwar in Sicherheit, aber trotzdem weit weg von der Heimat und in ständiger Sorge um Familie und Freunde. Sie haben die unfassbaren Dinge in Xinjiang schon sehr frühzeitig geschildert und immer wieder einen konsequenteren Umgang mit der chinesischen Regierung seitens Deutschlands und der Europäischen Union angemahnt. Spätestens seit der Veröffentlichung der sogenannten China Cable im Jahr 2019 wissen wir sehr genau, wie organisiert die willkürliche und zeitlich unbestimmte Internierung von Uiguren in Xinjiang durch chinesische Behörden vorangetrieben wurde. Ich gehe davon aus, sobald die Menschenrechtskommissarin der Vereinten Nationen Michelle Bachelet uneingeschränkten Zugang zu Xinjiang erhält, wird ihr Bericht kaum zu anderen Ergebnissen kommen. Und Sie stellen zu Recht die Frage, ob die deutsche Bundesregierung, der Deutsche Bundestag wirklich alle Möglichkeiten ausschöpft, um diese Verbrechen gegen die Menschlichkeit zu beenden. Die Bundesregierung betont gegenüber der chinesischen Regierung immer wieder, dass die Behandlung der Uiguren massivste Menschenrechtsverletzungen darstellen. Aber ich weiß, dass sie mehr wollen. Deutschland hat sich verpflichtet, in der jetzigen Koalition eine menschenrechtsbasierte Außenpolitik durchzuführen. Und wir sind darüber im Gespräch, lassen Sie uns darüber nachdenken, wie das auch gegenüber China noch stärker deutlich werden kann. Sehr geehrte Damen und Herren, ich wünsche Ihnen eine erfolgreiche Veranstaltung, alles Gute, und ich bin offen und wünsche mir weiterhin eine gute und vertrauensvolle Zusammenarbeit.
Vielen Dank. So this was our last speaker for the opening ceremony. So we will now have a 10-minute break. We will ask also everyone to come back in 10 minutes because we have a panel discussion on genocide prevention and responsibility to protect, which will be moderated by Hanno Schedler from Society for Threatened People and will include panelists Jeffrey Nice, Nick Vetch, Michael Polak, and Ralph Bunchy from UNPO as well. For 1 hour, we will have a Q&A session just right after, so please also prepare accordingly.
Hazır biz 10 minutluk qısqa tənəffüs ilib var, tənəffüs vaxtı buldu. Tənəffüsdən keyin 1 saatlik qısqa söhbət proqramısı oldu. Temisi irqi qırğınçılıqның aldın ilish və qandaq to'xtatish haqida. Bununğa Uyghur Sud kollegiyasininki heyeti a'zolari və advokatlar qatnashidi. Söhbətning oxirisida savolinglar bo'lib qolsa, qoldirib qo'yib 15 minutlik savol-javob söhbəti ham o'tkazildi. Hammalarga rahmat.